last year we did this review episode where we sort of talked about the whole year, what we got right, what we didn't get right, whatever. At the end of this year, we want to do the same thing. However, at the end of this year, we want to be proud of everything we've done. We want to make sure that we actually get to all the things that we want to do. So we're going to try to go about this year a little bit differently. So we're going to split it up into 4 quarters. So January, February, March, and on and on. And we're just going to focus on 3 months at a time for the whole year. We're going to come up with a plan, carry out the plan, and then sort of review every 3 months. And hopefully that'll kind of keep us on track through the whole year. So that's what we'll be talking about.
All right, so we've been a little slow getting this episode done because it's actually the end of January. But let's talk about what we want to do for the first 3 months. And I'm actually glad we kind of waited a little bit because I've really spent the past few weeks trying to figure out, what do I really want to do? I've kind of put a lot of thought into this, at least on my end. So I want to hear what you're thinking for this 3 months, and then I'll tell you what I'm thinking.
Okay, the way I sort of went about it was I thought about the whole year, and I came up with maybe 20 or 30 things that I want to do this year. And then I started just kind of sorting those things. And not all of them are sorted, but I'm trying to take care of as many of them as I possibly can in the first quarter. And I don't know, there are things that are sort of one-offs, one-time events. One of them was to go to Portland, go visit you. So that was on the list for this year. And it seems like a simple thing, but it's actually kind of difficult to get everything in place to be able to do that. But
that's on the books, right?
Yeah, that is, plane tickets have been purchased, everything's in place. It hasn't happened yet, so I can't cross it off, but it is in theory going to happen. But that's a one-off. That's like an event.
Right.
Those are easy to take care of because you can just kind of, put them on they're not easy to take care of, but you can put them on the calendar. It's very concrete whether you do them or not. Then there are many other things, and this is sort of where I begin to struggle a little bit, are the day-to-day things where you just want to sort of improve indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to get too into the weeds yet, but so I have a couple of those things. And then I have a couple more bigger event stuff that I'm managing to fit into the first 3 months. But I don't know. How did you break it down? How did you even come to a decision of what you want to do in these first 3 months?
Well, at first, my knee-jerk thinking, just for New Year in general, was let's make some New Year's resolutions. Let's figure out all the cool stuff I'm going to definitely accomplish this year. So the initial thought is to set a bunch of goals and then not do them. And that's pretty much every year. We're all pretty familiar with that cycle. A lot of times I'll come up with a fitness plan of, I'm going to work out this much every day and get super strong and super fast and stuff like that. I'll come up with all kinds of plans. And inevitably what happens is during the novelty phase where I'm very excited about it, I do really well. And then it kind of falls off and, kind of crashes and burns. So my thinking is, all right, let's just try to take a really different approach this time because I know that that's not the best way to do it. So I have not really looked at any specific one-off goals, like you said. I might for the next quarters, but for the first 3 months, that's just not what I want to think about. For me, I just want to focus on the day, like the 24-hour cycle, and trying to get that into as good of a spot as I can. So that's my thinking there. It's all I'm really focused on. So I've kind of sliced that up a few different ways. One of the biggest motivators, this is kind of a overarching goal, I guess you could say, and this has to do with what we talked about in the year-end review, is I feel like I'm overthinking a lot of stuff, and I I know overanalyzing is kind of our deal, but I mean, jokes aside, it actually kind of sucks in some ways. Where it some days it feels like even the stupid stuff, just the little things of getting up, starting work, getting breakfast or not getting breakfast, and go like just all the little decisions that add up to a day. I feel like I'm agonizing over all of them, and I can't think of a specific example. You see this in movies and in books and shows and stuff where you have some character, maybe it's like an older guy or something, where they just do the same thing every day. You know, they have this routine. They slide their shoes on, make the coffee, grab their toast and egg or something, and it's just this super familiar routine that just always happens. The only thing I can think of right now is the intro to Dexter, which is kind of a weird example, but you know, that kind of thing, making coffee, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And something about that just seems so incredibly appealing to me. Like there's so much beauty in that simple every single day same thing. Like you aren't deciding how it's going to go or what you're going to do. Just, you know, you wake up 30 seconds before your alarm and you do the stuff that you always do, and that just seems so comforting to me. So that's kind of my vague inspiration, is that I want to improve things for myself to where I don't have to think as much about all these little decisions that really don't need to be made. You know, I want my day to just kind of go how I think it needs to go, and I just don't think about it anymore, and that frees me up to think about other things, more interesting things. That's one of the main motivators.
So I've heard this before. I don't actually know if it's true, but it sounds really nice. I've heard that the way they sort of decide on the how they design and pave the pathways at, say, like a college campus, is that they build the whole campus and they don't pave the pathways. They hold off on that. And they just let the students walk wherever the students walk. And they hold off on the pathways for, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something, until you know the natural pathways form between buildings, and it becomes very clear where students are actually walking. And then they pave them, because that makes the most sense. Because now you have actual usable pathways that sort of the natural, they just sort of naturally formed. And I think if you take sort of everything we've talked about, I feel like we've sort of been holding off, you know, in some ways, holding off on laying down the concrete pathways and locking things in place, because we want to see what works best, or, you know, what's actually realistic, or whatever. And a lot of the experiments we've done have sort of been trying to find those natural pathways, you know, not using your phone, or waking up at the same time every day, or whatever. And I feel like with this year, I want to start paving the pathways that we've started finding. And so one of the big ones that worked really well for me is just waking up at the same time every day. That was so mind-blowing to me, how well it kept me on track. And of course, I was very religious about it then, and there was a couple things that didn't quite work, but I think I've kind of come up with some solutions to sort of fix that. And so I've worked in this getting up at the same time every day method or thought process into this year. And so far, I've been able to keep it up for almost a whole month with a little bit of leeway. So, you know, if I really need sleep, I'll sleep an extra hour. If I want to get up earlier, I'll wake up an extra 30 minutes earlier, whatever. But I've been able to keep pretty much the exact same wake up time for a whole month now. And so just things like that. I've, you know, the morning routine where I spend some time before work working on art or doing whatever I want to do. I've realized over time that is that's how I want to live. It's such a good, wonderful way of working. And I've realized that is just something I want to hold on to. So I've worked that into my my daily routine. So things like that, I'm starting to kind of solidify, and I don't want to rethink them or wonder if I should do them or not. I just want to wake up and do them and enjoy them and not worry about if they're right or wrong or is there a better way or whatever. I've found something that works pretty well, so I just want to do that and not second guess it for for a long period of time. I'm sure eventually, maybe the campus buildings, some of them shut down and a different one opens or whatever. And so the paths kind of have to change. But for right now, everything's sort of with everything in the place that it's in now. I'm pretty sure about certain things. And so I'm just starting to pave the pathways, I guess.
I like that concept a lot. I'd never thought about that. I can tell you for sure they definitely did not do that at UCF because I remember going to school there where they would have all these sidewalks. You want to go from this building to that building, and then you're supposed to walk along this right angle path. So, you walk out and then take a sharp right turn and walk back towards the building. So obviously not a single person ever did that. So we'd have these pristine sidewalks that nobody ever walked on, and then these dirt paths in between them. So they should have done that, but they didn't.
That's kind of the other side of the metaphors, that sometimes we make these plans, or we think that we can hold ourselves to, I don't know, working out for 4 hours a day every day for forever. So that's like paving a path at a weird right angle that makes no sense because it's just completely unrealistic and it doesn't actually fit the lifestyle that you have. So
yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about the traditional take on the New Year's resolution kind of thing, or you always come up with this fantastical thing you're going to do and then you never do it because it's kind of like that. It's like that right angle path where, yeah, of course you're not going to do 4 hours of exercise every day. It doesn't matter what, December 31st you is fantasizing about. It's not realistic.
Right.
So it's funny you mentioned the wake up thing. So I printed out. Okay, you can't really see it. I printed out your chart, which I'm holding up this really lovely year-long chart thing that you made, where it has these columns of. There's 12 columns that are each month, and then there's every day in that month kind of cascading down. They're just these little circles with a number in them, so you basically see the entire year on one sheet. And each day has its own little spot. And you definitely can't see this. I need to use like a darker marker. But
every day has its own bubble, and you get to fill in a bubble if you do that thing on that day.
Yeah. So I checked them off, which means that you can't really see them on the camera. You definitely can't see it if you're listening to us or audio. But I debated what I wanted to do with this. I love the idea. I love being able to see the whole year at once. It gives you that perspective. It lets you really understand the idea of a day and how that fits in with the year. I love that so much. But I kept thinking, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to have 3 different color markers and, have different shades for each circle if I did all the habits for that day, or how do I actually want to do it? And then I'm thinking, even though there are different habits that I want to start putting in place, and maybe we can kind of talk about that too. I really wanted this to be simple because that's kind of the whole deal, right? Is that it's simple. It's just a year. So I thought, all right, let's figure out what is the most important habit and what is the anchor habit that everything else kind of grows off of. And then let me just track that. So for me, that was waking up at the same time every morning, obviously, because that is just the core habit. So awesome. I've been tracking that, and I kind of arrived at the same place, which is this is what I want to do. I don't want to be super religious about it, but I also can't be so flexible that it kind of falls apart. So I haven't really been worrying about it on weekends. So I sleep in a bit on weekends, although the dog kind of prevents that from getting too out of control because he thinks 7:30 is when we wake up. And I think I've only missed, like, other than weekends, which I didn't really worry about, I think I only missed 2 days this month of getting up on time, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's made me think about, so this is one of the things that I want to have in place throughout the day. I think it is the most important one. But it really made me think about new behaviors and habits. because I was doing this some last year, but it lasted for a while and then it kind of fell off and then I kind of picked it up again. And it was just a hard thing to really keep in place. And so I was thinking about that specific habit of, okay, what can I do to put a behavior in place? And I'm going to have to apply this same protocol to some of the other things that I want to get in place for the rest of the day. This is a 3-month project, but so far waking up is working really well. So this is not new at all. We've kind of talked about this stuff, but I just try to make it really simple for myself to where I could think about it and apply it and just make this basic set of rules. So here's my little protocol. I figure there's 3 things you have available to you to put a new behavior in place. 1 is willpower, obviously. 2 is conditioning. And then 3 is environmental change. The way I see it, those are the 3 things that you can do. So willpower, that's obvious. That's just you kind of gritting your teeth, making it happen. Pretty much by definition, that's not something you would normally do. Like if you're exercising your willpower, you're having to kind of strain, right? Like use your mental strength. So clearly, obviously, that's not sustainable. I can't be, forcing myself out of bed every morning. The way I almost kind of think about that is like if you're building a house and you need to put like a beam in place, you could hold it there and maybe you're really strong and you'd be like, I can hold this for an hour, right? That's kind of like willpower. Like you can hold it, but obviously it's not permanent, so you can't fantasize that that's going to be you for an entire year. So there's willpower. Conditioning is just you adapting to something where your body and your mind, after doing something for a while, usually it feels difficult at first, but it just becomes easier over time. Like waking up is a great example because your body naturally starts to wake up at the same time if you always wake up at that time. If my sleep schedule is a mess and then I set an alarm for 7:30, it feels awful. I wake up out of a dead sleep and I have 0 willpower or negative willpower. I hate myself and my life and everything, and I hate past me for thinking of setting an alarm for 7:30. Like it's just awful. But after a while, you wake up naturally. Like it just sort of happens. Because there's conditioning, right? And you can use your willpower to kind of get you over the hump to where you start conditioning yourself. So that's like a pretty legitimate use of willpower. And then there's the environmental change. And environmental change is like the gold standard, the S tier. If you can make a permanent environmental change that you never have to think about again, it's there now. It's permanent. You don't touch it. Then that's amazing. That takes 0 willpower. You don't even have to remember it. It's just there forever and it affects you. And that I was really trying to approach this stuff from that perspective and try to make any possible way I could try to find an environmental change to make. And one thing that happened at the start here was, so my wife was kind of getting up around the same time, or at least a little bit after, but her schedule changed a little bit. So she's sleeping a little bit later. And so she said, hey, the closet light that comes on at 7:30, that's not really working for me. I want to keep sleeping. So I had to turn off the light alarm in the morning. And I'm thinking, this is a disaster. This will break me for sure because I was already hanging on by a thread. Now it's going to be that much worse because I just lost one of the environmental things. So this is terrible. So I'm like, what do I do? So I told you I have that bed cooler thingy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which it's kind of an insane thing. It was expensive too. It was $1,000. And honestly, it was well spent. I mean,
it's just like I don't know, like a mattress or it's a pad.
Yeah, it's a pad. It goes it's under the top sheet. So it's on top of the mattress, on top of the mattress cover, but under the top sheet. So you've just got a thin, sheet between you and this pad. And you can get them in different sizes, but this takes up like half of a queen bed. or king bed or something. I don't know. So I sleep on this, and it's a liquid cooling mesh. So there's water that flows through this whole thing in these little capillary tubes that run through it, and it goes out this big tube at the bottom, and it goes into this big box on the floor. And this big box, it has these thermoelectric coolers in it, and so it pumps the water underneath you, basically sucks out your body heat, or even actively cools you. You can crank it down to be really cold. It'll cool the water, pump it underneath you, and then it blows air over it. It's basically like a little mini air conditioner type of setup. So this is honestly, I'm certainly not paid to say this by the company, but it's been really great for me, just being able to cool my body down at night. That was like a major problem for me. But so I realized that this thing is also a heater. So I have it set now. It's on a schedule, which this is a big key thing. It's scheduled, right? So it's always the same. I never touch it. It just does its own thing. So it gets cold at night. It actually gets really cold at the first part of the night to try and facilitate deep sleep, because apparently that's helpful to deep sleep. And then it warms up a little bit for the rest of the night. So I'm still cool, but a little bit warmer. And that kind of helps with the lighter sleep stages. But then at 7:30, it goes full blast heat mode. And so at first I was like, well, this will definitely get me out of bed. I'm going to be all sweaty and miserable and hot and disgusting. So it'll just suck and I'll have to get out of bed, right? So maybe that kind of solves the problem. But actually, it is amazing. It is the best way to wake up that I have ever experienced. And apparently there's some physiology there too, where your body, we sleep inside in the air conditioning and everything. So like we have this very artificial temperature setup, but outdoors, it gets cold when the sun goes down. Like you cool down. That's part of probably why you need to be cooler as you go to sleep. And then in the morning it warms up. So it actually feels fantastic, because I'm cold all night. I'm sleeping on this freezy pad thing. But then in the morning, as I'm waking up, it heats me up and it feels really nice and it wakes me up, but it feels great. Like I'm like, look forward to that. Like, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but I look forward to that method of being woken up. So I discovered this, and I'm just weirdly excited about it because it's been so fantastic. But that has helped me get up tremendously.
Well, I have never heard of people using this as a way to wake up in the morning. So cool, you discovered a new thing.
And obviously, you don't have to buy $1,000 thing. You could just, make the AC go much colder at night. A lot of people kind of freak out about that, but remember, it's not hot out, so it doesn't take much energy to cool off your house at night. You cool your AC down at night and then just have it heat up in the morning, and it should be fine. It's a little tricky when you have more than one person and not everybody's on board with that. So the little personal cooler heater thing works well, but man, that has been an absolute game changer for me.
Okay, so you changed your environment
Yeah.
to get you back on track. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I also set up an alarm like on a dresser that I have to get up to turn off. So like the bed heater heats me up. My watch alarm goes off at 7:30. If I don't get up within 5 minutes, the alarm goes off on the dresser. The dog starts freaking out because after a week of being consistent, he starts really getting into that. So he wakes up the second I wake up. So there's a lot of stuff going on. This is just one of the things. But all of those different environmental changes, they have been fantastic. They're working super well.
So on the same note, I kind of said it in passing at some point when we were talking about what we want out of next year. And I said, I want to be able to look back on this year and be proud of myself. And it kind of hit me because, and I was also talking about that great filter that some people have to where they can kind of just make decisions because they have this idea of what they want. They have this filter. And so I've been kind of I started using that as a filter. Am I proud of it? And it's about as vague as asking yourself if it sparks joy, right? Am I proud of this, or does it spark joy? I don't know. It's kind of vague, but I've been asking myself, am I proud of this? Yes or no? And one of the first things to answer no on was my extra computer, YouTube binging time at night. So that was a big goal this year to get rid of. And I told you I set an alarm to where my computer shuts off at 10:30 every night, no matter what. There's a little alarm that goes off, and then it shuts off a minute later.
Right.
And there's really almost no way of stopping it. But that for some reason it works way better than just shutting off. Like I have for the entire month of January, I have not been sitting on my computer when it shuts off. I just avoid my computer completely unless there's something specific that I absolutely have to do on it, like this, or record videos or whatever. And that, so I guess on the note of environmental change, I'm focusing on getting rid of the things I'm not proud of, or I just don't want to do anymore. Like the phone, I haven't really found a concrete way to keep it plugged in or keep it in one spot, when I'm home, but I've really just gotten in the habit of doing that. So I really don't carry it around much. But getting rid of the computer was such a big thing and has gained me back hours of time. So yeah, I don't know what the takeaway is there other than I'm really proud of myself for getting rid of something that I was not proud of before. And I don't know why I put up with it for so long. And I really want to keep that a priority. And it's actually been really easy, but I want to keep that a priority for the rest of the year, is just keeping those things from creeping back in. I don't want computer usage to go up. I don't want phone usage to go up. I want to keep those in check. Just like waking up at the same time every day. I want to keep that in check. It can go an hour here or an hour less there, or whatever, but I want to bring it back to home base. And so I'm trying to, find that home base with everything and keep things where I'm proud of them, or that feel right.
It's funny you mentioned the computer thing. So you were talking about that last time we recorded and how we had to hurry up because your computer was about to shut off. Just thinking, man, one of my other major goals, this might stretch beyond 3 months, but it's certainly something I'm actively working on, is my behavior around using a computer. And I'm in kind of a bad spot in some sense, in that I work from home, have a pretty flexible job. My personal projects are computer related. I tend to play games on a computer. There's just a lot of stuff that's computer usage. And I just have this problem where I tend to get distracted on a computer. And, we mentioned this a little bit last time too, but with the phone, you can kind of be black and white about it a little bit, or you just say, okay, well, I'm keeping the phone plugged in where I'm not actually carrying it with me. And so I can't just pull it out all the time and check it and do pointless stuff. I have to actually make the effort of walking across the room to go check it, which doesn't sound huge, but it is. It totally changes the way you behave when it's no longer inside your personal space. You think, oh, I should go check this thing, but I would have to get up. Nope, never mind. Not actually important. Like, it's just this really quick, natural adaptation. Anyway, for the computer, I can't really do that. I wish that I could, but I can't. It's my job, and it's also stuff that I work on that I think is important. So, like, I'm just using a computer all the time. So what do I do there? And so you inspired me a little bit with the computer shuts off at 10:30. Even though that's not quite what I need. I could have it shut off, but the problem happens during the day when I'm supposed to be working. I can't take a binary approach, but it made me think about, okay, what kind of environmental changes could I make on the computer? Again, there's those three things. I can use willpower, but that's fatiguing, and I've obviously tried that before. It doesn't work very well. I can try and condition myself, which kind of works with willpower. You do it for a while. Hopefully it just gets easier. You get more in the habit, but it's so easy to regress with that. So I'm thinking, all right, those things are great, but what can I do that actually makes an environmental change? So I've actually worked quite a bit on this. So a little bit of background. I use Linux, which is an operating system that certainly has its flaws, but one of the strengths of it is that it's extremely customizable. And so several years ago, I kind of set up my computer and the operating system, the environment to work in a very specific way. And I thought it was awesome. I thought it was just the coolest thing and I loved it. And it's not really until now that I realized that I screwed up pretty badly. So the way it works, most operating systems, like if you're using Mac OS and you're using Windows, you're using what's called a stacking window manager, where you have a bunch of windows, they're all on your desktop, and there's like one on top of the other. You can sort of drag it to the side and grab the one behind it. Once you click on it, it kind of brings it to the front. It becomes focused, right? You just have all these different windows. You can minimize them, you can bring them out, but everything is just kind of there. And I remember using that for a while and thinking, this sucks. I don't like this. It's always a hassle. Like, what do I have open? If I have too many things open, I kind of lose stuff, and I'm always like searching around. Like, is it back here? Or is it minimized? Or maybe it's not open or whatever. I just feel like I'm trying to keep up with different windows all the time. So that I don't want that. So I set up my operating system to use what's called a tiling window manager, which basically does away with the third dimension. So where if you open a single window, it takes up the entire screen. And if you open two, then they share the screen half and half. They get split. And if you open four, it'd be like these four tiles on the screen. So there's never any depth to it. And obviously the screen gets very crowded very quickly. So you kind of have to figure out how to work around that. So the way you do that is you have this idea of different workspaces, where if you're on workspace number 1, you see this window, and then you hold down, control, or hold down control, press 2, and you switch to workspace number 2. And you might have a different program there, and you can switch to workspace number 3. And so you're able to kind of move between these different workspaces, and they all have their different windows. I promise there's a point to this extremely like esoteric thing. So I had it set up that way. And then I kind of programmed it so that all the applications that I normally use, they have their own specific workspace. So if I hit Control 1 and I go to workspace 1, that's where I have the terminal, command line. I can do that kind of nerdy command line stuff there. If I go to workspace 8, that's where Firefox is. So I have Firefox on workspace 8. 9 is where Discord is, and so on. So I have a bunch of these different apps. Like 11 is where Spotify is, and I set it up so that even if Firefox isn't open, like say the computer just like freshly started up, if I hit Control 8 and go to workspace 8, it knows that Firefox isn't open and it immediately opens it. So all I ever have to do, it doesn't matter how many programs I have open or what I'm doing. If I go workspace 8, Firefox is always there. And if it hasn't been started, it starts up immediately. And it can never be anywhere else. So I always know exactly where it is. It's only ever 2 key presses away. Control 8. And same for Spotify, and same for Discord, and same for everything. And I thought this was the coolest thing ever, because I never have to search for anything at all. It's just always right there. I want the browser, 2 key presses, boom, at the browser. I want this, I'm over there, your Spotify, everything, right? And so I set that up, and I'm like, this is so good. And I used it, and I loved it. And only recently, upon reflection, have I realized how messed up that is, because I have developed this habit of, say I'm on workspace 1 and I'm writing some code, and then it has to compile, and it takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Instantly, I'm on workspace 8, where the web browser is. It's not even a thought. It's just a button press. It's completely instinctual. So I'm into the browser, just doing whatever. Maybe I'm on social media or Reddit or something, or maybe not. Maybe I'm just browsing Amazon or something stupid, but it's just right there. And it's so easily accessible. And then I'm on Discord, or I'm on this or that. Like the cost of context switching from the thing I'm working on to these other things that are distracting is like 0. It's the most streamlined process possible. I don't even have to wait for the program to start. Like, it's always there. It's always set up. And so I'm starting to notice this, and I'm realizing, man, this is kind of bad. This is like that concept of the slot machine. We talked about this a million years ago, but basically a slot machine is set up to where you take this very easy action, It used to be pulling the lever of a slot machine like this. You would do that. But now, if you ever go to a casino, nobody actually pulls a lever. There's just a button on the front, and you just press the button to spin the wheels, because this is like too much effort. You want something even easier. But you spin the wheel by pressing the button, you get some random result. And that's what I had basically set up for myself, where I have this super easy action that takes me into some random result. Like, who knows what somebody said on Discord? Maybe it's really cool and funny, or whatever. Maybe someone responded to me, or what's on the internet. Don't know, but it's something interesting and exciting, surely. Who knows? So I'd built this system where those things that were distracting were super easy, and the stuff that wasn't ended up being harder to get to. And not really by any intentional design, but if workspace 1 is where the terminal emulator is, so I have to go to workspace 1, but it doesn't open automatically because I never really bothered to set that up. So I have to open it, and then I have to like type in some commands to bring up whatever I'm working on, and have to kind of do a few more commands, and eventually I get to, where I need to be. It's like there's a bunch of friction there that I never really thought about, but there's no friction for the distracting stuff. So anyway, the thinking was, this is very bad. This is a bad environment, because all the stuff that I don't want to be doing habitually is really, really easy. It's like the slot machine. But all the stuff that I think is important, that I would be proud of spending my time on, it's harder. It's not super hard, but just it's several seconds, maybe 10 or 20 seconds of friction. So it winds up, it's like I've built this world where it just funnels me into the wrong things constantly. So I started thinking, okay, let's try and fix this, or at least work on fixing it. So first thing to go was, things do not open automatically anymore if I open that workspace. I still like the idea of having it organized. I don't want it to get lost, but I want it to not open automatically. So if I go to workspace 8, there's nothing there. And then I have to, type in Firefox manually to open it. But instead of opening Firefox, it opens a password box. And I have to type in the password. Yes, I really do need to use the internet. And once I've typed that in, I usually get it wrong once, and then it errors, and I have to do it again. Then it brings up the internet. And it automatically closes after a little while. So if I do my stuff, and then it's idle, it goes away, and then if I go back, I have to do that again. It's nothing awful, but it puts friction there between me and the internet. And it is amazingly effective. Like, it's not this night and day thing right away. You're like, oh, well, I've totally broken my habit of using the internet. But because it's just this environmental change that you don't have to think about, just that frequent habit of, oh, let me flip over to Firefox, see what's going on the internet. It's just not there. It's a little bit of pain to get it open. Not a lot. If I really need it, it's no big deal. But it just, like, it has this little friction. So if I'm waiting 30 seconds for something to compile and I just find myself tabbing over, I'm like, I don't really want to put in the password. It's not really worth it for 30 seconds. So I just go back and I wait. And then I start thinking about stuff that I need to be thinking about. Like, hey, what are we doing? What is this code supposed to do? Am I on the right path? Should I be doing this at all? And it like winds up with this little moment of reflection and meditation. And I've started trying to kind of go the other way too, where one of the habits I want to work on is whenever I sit down at the computer, I want to bring up my text document for the day, the to-do list where I start writing things down and figuring things out. And so I went through the trouble of trying to get that to feel just like Firefox used to feel, where I just hit a key and it brings that up. And if it's not already open, it opens it up, puts me in the right spot, and I'm there. But it's not this distracting thing. It's like, what do you want to do for today? What's on your mind, or whatever. Like, it's my text document for that day. So that is super frictionless, but the distracting stuff has more friction.
So this is way less complicated than your computer stuff, but one of the things that I didn't even realize was happening was until I set this up. But I set it up to shut off automatically. And after a little while, I realized that it was shutting down my computer, whereas before my computer would just go to sleep at night. And that's probably bad or something, but it would just go to sleep. And so in the morning, I just, hit enter and then type in a password, immediately. And then it would open up and everything would be right there waiting for me. But because it's been shutting down, it's actually been shutting down the computer. So I have to
Right.
boot it up every time I want to use it, which is enough of an effort to where I think about, do I really want to be using my computer? Is there an actual purpose for this? No. And so don't press the button and it just stays off. And so that's sort of an even bigger thing that's happened since I set up to shut off. It's just that little bit of extra effort to turn it on even has kept me away from it completely. And also in an effort to make more friction with the computer, I've just moved my chair from my computer to my drawing desk. And then it's kind of a hassle to move this chair back and forth. So as long as it's just at the drawing desk, I don't really want to have to move it to my computer, turn it on, and boot it up and everything. So it's just sort of using the computer is now a little bit more difficult, and it works.
Yeah, I think like I said, I've really been working on this the past few weeks. Like this has been a major thing for me, is trying to figure this out. I feel like of those three things, the willpower, the conditioning, and then the environmental change, we tend to really just focus on the willpower thing. You'll hear people talk about it all the time, like, oh, you got to resist, you can't let yourself get distracted. And like, yeah, that might be part of it, but that's just where all of our focus is. And the environmental stuff, we never think about. I mean, we just absolutely never talk or think about it. And, we were doing this or working on this stuff for the bedtime routine and sleep and everything. For me, the thing that's made the difference has been environmental changes. And they feel small, but they aren't. Having the lights get dim, at these different stages throughout the night leading up to bedtime, that's huge, because I never think about it. I don't have to remember to turn the lights down. It just happens. And even if I'm like, I don't care, it just naturally starts to make you more tired, because that's how your body works. And same thing in the morning. I have all these different things in place to try to help wake me up. And over time, because they're just there, it makes this huge, huge difference. Whereas me just trying to use my willpower would not have worked. And for something as important as the computer, I mean, this is different for different people, but like I said, for me, I mean, I spend half my life in front of the computer, and I don't really have a choice on that unless I change careers. The environment that I'm in, we totally take this for granted, but it's huge. And mine, I'm kind of fortunate in that I'm a developer, so I'm, able to kind of do some of these things where I can, like I said, I kind of messed it up originally because I was going for convenience without really thinking about how that affects me behaviorally. But I am in a position where I can, figure out some scripts and behaviors to try and, make it work the way I think it should, to where I'm in a healthier environment where I help keep myself away from these things. But your phone, for example, not everybody works on the computer all day, but everybody has a phone. And even upon a moment of reflection, anyone recognizes that this phone is designed to be distracting. It is designed to pull your attention in a million different ways. Just one obvious thing is that it gives you notifications all the time. It's just always asking you to do something, and most of the notifications aren't for you. They're for the developer of that app trying to get you to engage with it. Like somebody else is trying to make money one way or another off of your attention. And so they designed this environment that tries to do that. And if you really pay attention to how the really popular apps work and how the environments work, they're built that way. There's very careful attention taken to trying to make it so that you use it like a slot machine. Like that's really what they're after. And there's just kind of there's spectrum of, optimizing for monthly active users, trying to get people to use their service more and more. Eventually you just cross over into full-on addiction, where that's what you're doing, is you're creating a problem for somebody, getting them addicted to your service. That's what they do, and they're very deliberate about it. Then again, you look at something like TikTok. There's so many little tiny things that make that so addictive. One, they'll send you notifications all the time. But you tap on the app icon, and that is the only action you have to take because you are immediately launched into fresh content. And it's portrait, like they were very deliberate about that because you don't have to rotate your phone. That's a little bit of friction. It's always something new. And then if you want to move to the next thing, it's a single action and you're on to the next thing. And it's always random. You don't know what it's going to be. So it's exciting. Like they've just built a slot machine. Like they've turned it into this program. And I'm not trying to get again off on a rant about social media, but the point is that those things matter hugely. There is a reason why TikTok is eating the world, and even the stuff that we thought was like peak addiction can't keep up. Like Facebook is doing terribly because they're just not on that level. The point is that that stuff matters to the tune of trillions of dollars in terms of market, but we don't, like, us humans don't think about that on our own personal scale. And so all I want to do is try and use some of those concepts on myself. My only desire is to benefit me so that I can use these things in a more healthy way. And so I'm trying to take some of those concepts and apply it to this problem of me getting very distracted on a computer. And so again, environmental changes are the best thing you can make because it's just this permanent thing. And so I'm trying to figure out how to implement those things. But that's just something, like you said, the difference between having your computer go to sleep and power off ends up being huge in terms of behavior, even though it sounds like the silliest, most trivial thing. But it's not,
Right.
because it changes your behavior the way you change that slot machine type of relationship.
I think we think of ourselves as always deciding what we do or what we want to do.
Mm.
But man, if you start looking at what you actually do when you walk into, say, your room or my office or whatever, I don't decide what to do. I walk in my office, and what I was previously doing is immediately just walking to my computer, hitting enter, typing in the password, and instantly I'm on my computer without even thinking about it. There was no decision. I just flowed into my room, onto my computer, and then I'm on YouTube for the next 2 hours, and I don't even know how I got there. And
that's the conditioning thing. That's number 2, is you're
Yeah.
conditioned for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole day goes like that. I mean, there's very few areas where you actually decide, intentionally what you want to do. And so, yes, instead of complaining constantly about social media and computer and whatever, try switching the focus to making the hard stuff way easier and more exciting and more fun. Like there was, a couple weeks ago, I really want to paint, but every time I looked over at the painting, it fills me with this feeling of just, I don't want to do it. And then you have this guilt of, oh, but I should want to do it. And you're like, no, but you just don't want to do it. And then, you question everything and whatever. But that was happening. So I sat down and I just started writing about, trying to figure out what it was that, why I didn't want to just sit down and paint. And some of the answers were very simple. It was just that I hate my stupid chair. I hate my chair. It slides around on the tile and it's very uncomfortable. And the drawing table is like a little bit too low. And the chair doesn't go far down enough. So your knees just kind of hit the table and then the thing shakes. And I just hate it. And then my whole paint setup was too close to the board. And so it was just cramped. None of these things I was actually considering when I was thinking about the decision to paint, but all of them played into it. And so when I actually sat down to think about why it was that I didn't want to paint, it actually had very little to do with the painting itself, and it was just all these stupid little environment things that played into it. So I sort of rethought it and rearranged things, and I think it's a little bit more comfortable now. But just focusing on what you can do to make things easier is just, I mean, I feel like we've been sort of focusing on this for a while because we decided that was the important things, to make things easier and make them consistent. And if you can do that, if you can prioritize that consistency over, any sort of victory in a single day, then you can
Right.
go much further. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the approach I'm really trying to take to all this stuff is find the things that I want to be doing and just smooth them out as much as I can. Make it easy, make it feel good. Just try to polish that up in any way that I can. And then for the stuff that I know is problematic, like opening a web browser, that's just the ultimate slot machine of the entire world's information. I want to make that just have a little bit more friction. It doesn't need to be insane, but it needs to be somewhat of an analog to the phone thing where it moves out of your arm's reach, where it's no longer just this instinctual habit. Like you said, you walk into the room, you just press the computer and you're on it. You don't even think about it. It's this almost unconscious action. I want to take those things and move them out of that zone where it can't just be an unconscious action. I have to slowly type out, yes, I really do need to use the internet, and then go through that slightly painful process. And it really changes the relationship with that. And in terms of the decision making willpower, as much as I possibly can, I want to use that and apply that when I'm trying to set those things up. When I'm thinking about my environment, when you're deciding, hey, I'm going to have my computer shut down instead of go to sleep, like that's when you're doing something, you're taking an action, you're using your willpower to say, I'm going to go ahead and make this change. And you're thinking about your environment, you're trying to make a positive change and you're having to reflect on that. But that's when you want to use it as much as you can to where you set that up and then you just never have to, deal with it again. And I know that not everything works that way. Some stuff is just, you can't quite program your way out of it, but in any possible way, it's just the first thing you want to go after.
Okay, let's try to reel this back to this idea of 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, for both of us, making our sort of home base of our day-to-day activities it's definitely a priority.
Yep.
And that's what I've been working on too. Is that it? I mean, I think that's enough, but I don't know if my goals are so specific to 3 months, but the idea of the 3 months is that after, and I can already see this after 1 month, but after 3 months, you will have a much better idea of what's working and what's not. And you can sort of see the projection for the end of the year. And, and it will very realistically hit you in the face of what's going to be possible and what's not. Because after 1 month, I've realized that I've made so little progress, even though I've really wanted to, so little progress on my, independent art stuff. And I'm realizing, okay, what I'm doing right now, and this is just after 1 month, what I'm doing right now after 4 weeks, it's not working. And if I stay at this pace, there is no reason why it will change at all by the end of the year. So something sort of drastic has to happen with that. Either I got to sacrifice something else or I got to figure out a different way to work it. But because we're choosing this 3 months to just kind of focus on 3 months, I've just become able to sort of see how things will work in the long term. And it's, I've always been jealous of people where, you ask them, oh, can you go to a party in, a month from now or whatever? They're like, let me check my schedule. And then they check their schedule and they know instantly if they can go or not, or when they're busy or whatever. They just seem to have this conception of the calendar. And I've just never had that. But doing this has made me way more aware of just dates and times and how long something is, or I don't know. It's just made me so much more aware of actual concrete dates, which is wonderful because I'm checking all of my goals against those concrete dates. And I'm beginning to see what's possible and what is not. And it's also doing the 3 month, sort of breaking the year down. Okay, so the thing I'm doing every day, I made that list and with the little bubbles on it for every day. and I planned on using it for all kinds of different things. But I wanted to keep it really simple. So I whittled it down to one thing. And I chose pull-ups because pull-ups kind of, they're sort of representative of, uh, I don't know, just being on track. Am I keeping up with fitness? Am I whatever? So I'm doing that every day. But as I'm checking that off, I'm like, oh my God, it's already been a month. Just seeing those bubbles fill up, I'm already done with one row. That's insane. I just started this thing. Like it feels like I just started. And so I have this sense of urgency for every single day. And while I'm looking at this calendar of the whole year, and I don't know, just giving a little bit more attention to the calendar and concrete dates, and splitting this up into quarters and then single months, and then it just kind of naturally falls into week to week. It's really changed my perspective, and I think it's been really, really good. So I don't know if that's happened with you or not, but
Yeah, it has. Again, just the single sheet of the entire year is it's really something. It really makes you just kind of see it.
even if you just checked it off because you existed for that day,
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
still get you to just think about the whole year and how time is passing and how you really need to work on the things you want to work on because
Yeah.
time is flying by very quickly.
Yeah, the thing for me, so um I haven't decided on this yet. I'm still undecided, but one of the lifetime fitness goals for me has been to get a 500-pound deadlift. And a couple years ago, I live in Portland, and we shut down pretty hard for COVID. So we were kind of like, we shut down and then opened again. There's this little sweet spot where, everybody kind of thought things were cool, and then it got bad again. But during that little sweet spot, I was at the time going to this gym, and I was lifting pretty well. And so I'm like, I want to try to max today on the deadlift. Let's see what I can do, because I haven't really maxed in a while. And so I had a couple of really good lifts, feeling really good. Got 485, and I was like, that actually moved pretty nicely. I think I could probably do it. I could probably do 500 right now, or at least I think I have a pretty good shot at it. So I was debating trying it, but then I'm like, well, we're about to shut down, so I'll leave that for myself. I'm sure we'll be back in a few weeks. I'll leave that for myself then. It'll be like a good kind of reward for coming back and kind of getting through the downtime. So of course we're shut down forever. But at the time, I'm just thinking, like, I got tons of time. It's fine. I'm at 485, literally just 15 pounds away. Of course I'll get to 500. Well, okay. One thing leads to another. Stuff kind of gets weird. I don't really have access to the gym anymore for a long time. I now have a home gym, but at the time I didn't really. I had like not enough. Hey everybody, Mike here. So really sorry about this, but for some reason we lost the last about 20 minutes of this episode. Something went wrong with the audio, and it's just not there. So we debated redoing it, but we decided to just go ahead and release this one because the bulk of the conversation was there. Just to kind of not leave you on a cliffhanger and tell you what we actually talked about those last 20 minutes. I had brought up my lifetime goal of doing a 500-pound deadlift, just to kind of illustrate that at the time when I was pretty close and thinking about it, I figured I had tons of time. It wasn't a big deal. I would get it done, soon enough. But years later, I haven't done it, and really thinking about it and thinking about the shape of the year and the next year, and thinking in these month time block type of things, that really makes it clear that in order to do that, it's really going to take some effort, and it's going to take some dedicated, half of the year or so. And if I really want to do that this year, then I need to start doing it and really come up with a serious plan. And really just the thinking in terms of the months laid out this way, it really makes it clear that if you really want to accomplish stuff, you have to do it, and it has to happen pretty soon, or else it just isn't going to happen. And Daniel kind of shared some of the same thoughts along the lines of his different goals too. One thing that Dan mentioned towards the end that I think was really key and something we want to kind of revisit was He's noticed that for all of his artwork and things that he does, if there's some external motivator, it's a contract job or something he has to do for work or whatever, if there's an external factor, it always gets done. If there's a deadline, it happens by the deadline. But for personal projects, that is not the case. Pretty much by its nature, if you're doing something because you want to do it, well, there are no external factors. And that very often leads to it just not getting done because you really do often rely on that external motivator. And that's something that I hit me kind of personally too. So we kind of kicked this off until later, but one thing that we would like to do is try and work on that, try and figure out how can you create that type of environment for yourself for something that is internal, not something coming from your job or someone else, because oftentimes those are the most important things to us, and yet they're the least they tend to get done the least often, which is pretty sad. So that's something we both really like to work on, and we didn't have any super great solutions in this episode, but it's something we want to talk about soon. So anyway, again, sorry for that, but hopefully we'll figure out what this technical problem was and get it resolved for next time. So thanks again for listening. We'll see you in the next podcast.